going to check. I'm just going to assume that you all see us, that we're coming through at 6 p.m. East Coast time on the eve of game one of the Knicks Celtics series, the highly anticipated Knicks Celtics series. Welcome to the Hot Hand Theory pregame show. This is going to be a recurring episode that we have here. We're going to start every game of the Knicks Celtics series right here with us an hour before tip off. This is the series that we've all been waiting for. This is a series where we'll see what adjustments the Knicks are willing to make when they're pushed with their back up against the wall. This is the series where we'll start to find out where the Knicks are in relation to the best in the league. And I'm so excited for it. We have so much to break down. Again, like I mentioned already, like we tweeted out, we're going to be live before every single game of the series, whether it goes 4, 5, 6, or 7. We're going to have guests come on, Knicks analysts, Celtics analysts, who are really smart, and you're definitely going to want to hear what they have to say. But every time we're here, we're going to be connecting with the chat, making sure we get your thoughts, your opinions, and insights. Jeff's tweeting it out right now so that more people come and join us. Shout out to everyone in the chat already as people start to file in. But yeah, Jeff, I'm super excited about this, man. I'm excited about doing this before every game where we can kind of really talk about the nitty gritty of the previous game, what adjustments were made, break things down, and kind of anticipate what the Knicks should do, what the Celtics should do, what's going to happen, what Tibbs will do, what Mazzulla will do. And I think it's going to be great to have a bunch of different people come in along with the chat dropping their insights and knowledge and engaging. So I'm just excited for this. I'm excited for the series, obviously. The Pistons series was, it was what it was. And I'm not going to say obviously it was dramatic and Brunson hit the big shot. And I just couldn't get that hyped up for that though. That was just like you got to get past them, and it was more of a relief. And here's the test. Here's the actual big time series that we need to see what's going to happen. What are your initial thoughts, or anything you want to say about us doing this, or your initial thoughts on the series, wherever you want to go? Obviously the floor is yours.
You said you said two things that I think were just spot on and just perfect. One, you emphasized the potential adjustments that the Knicks have to make, and you didn't mention the potential adjustments the Celtics may have to make. That's because the Celtics don't have to make any adjustments going into this series. It is the Knicks' job. Obviously, their goal is to win this series, but to win 4 games in this series, their job is to force the Celtics into a spot where they have to change something. Because if the two just play basically their standard schemes, I almost said schemes, their
I heard you
standard
catch
schemes,
yourself. There you go.
and use their standard strategies, I think the Celtics are going to win this series pretty easily. I think the Celtics will probably cruise in 5 if nothing changes. And, open to being wrong about that, but I would be very, very surprised if the Knicks just rolled in, played the same way they've played all season, and nothing, and that was just it, and they were just a better team. The Celtics didn't have any answers. The first thing that needs to happen is they need to force the Celtics to be uncomfortable. And then the second thing that you said was about that this is the series that sort of we've been waiting for. I don't think that the Celtics really cared who they played again. This is the defending champs who had an amazing season last year, and then just on the heels of that win 61 games and kind of cruise through the regular season. I think they feel pretty comfortable with whoever they play in the East, including Cleveland. But I do know that this Knicks team was built for this matchup and has kind of been eyeing it all season long. From opening night when the Celtics blew the doors off the Knicks, it sort of felt like the Knicks were cruising through this season in a way where all eyes were on whenever they played Boston. It almost felt inevitable. So it's sort of surreal to actually get here. Like that doesn't always happen, So there are things you can't control and stuff happens. But this series that the Knicks built their team for has finally arrived, and it'll just be very interesting to see how it plays out because this. I'm not saying this is a make or break series. I don't think it would be fair or reasonable to just 100% of the time the Knicks lose this series be like, well, they lost the series, not good enough. I do think that the bar has to be more nuanced than that, and it's not as black and white. But I do think that whether the Knicks win or lose the series, there are plenty of outcomes where meaningful decisions are forced to be made this offseason, and that's why this is so important.
Yeah, you hit it. I mean, there are definitely a lot of there's so many ways that this could go. This is not a black or white situation. This is not Knicks win the series, X happens. I mean, well, if the Knicks win the series, that's one thing. But if the Celtics win the series, they can win in a lot of different ways. They can win in 4 games. They could win in 7 games. It could be a tough competitive series with tons of adjustments. It could be a situation where the Knicks roll over. It could be a situation where the Celtics don't make any shots and just lose on variance, which is totally possible for them given their style of how they play. There's so many ways that this could go. This is not just a black or white win or lose series. Obviously, Knicks fans and the Knicks want to win this series. Obviously, the Celtics fans and Celtics expect to win this series. But I do think there are a few things that may not be getting considered right now in the mainstream as people are talking about this series that we definitely should bring up and we will bring up as we continue to talk here. I just want to shout out to the people in the chat. John in the chat says, I agree, XJ's Detroit series was disappointing. Never should have been that close. Could have easily lost the series, which is kind of crazy. Yes, that is kind of crazy. Should have been that close, kind of sweeping that under the rug and just moving forward because they got through and that's all they needed to do. But yeah, I totally agree. We have from Pastor Claudio, scheme is greater than scheme. Shout out to Jeff on that. I love that one. Dragon Knight Sky says, love the channel, guys. Keep it up. This is about to be scary AF for the Knicks. Yeah. This is gonna be scary for the Knicks for sure, but here's what I want to say. I want to start by saying this, and we'll dive into more specifics, of course. We just saw the Pacers get a huge upset over the Cavs in Game 1. I do think it was a huge upset given how the Cavs have been playing and how the team that they've been all season. And I just think that there are some questions about the Celtics that need to be put on the table that maybe some aren't asking. I think this is being thought of as a foregone conclusion. The Celtics will win. Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 6? Who knows? But it'll be one of those. I'm not positive about that. And here's what I'll say. There's a lot of talk, and there has been a lot of talk about the Knicks starting lineup this season and how mediocre it was. It was how things needed to switch up because of that mediocrity. It needed to and hasn't happened yet, but should. And they've carried that mediocre play into the playoffs and beat even worse than mediocre. But the Celtics starting lineup, Jeff, we texted about this a little bit. Their championship level starting lineup was worse than the Knicks starting lineup this season. Obviously, they didn't have 1,800 possessions together, but they did have combined, over 2,000 possessions over the last 2 seasons. But this season, over 700 possessions, 760 to be exact. Holiday, White, Brown, Tatum, Porzingis. They had an even differential across those 760 possessions, which is 39th percentile in the league. Not a strong performance by their starting lineup this season. And 760 possessions is not a small sample of a 5-man lineup pairing. So grouping. So that is something to take notice of. And maybe we think it's just, a little variance here. The Celtics are very prone to being affected by variance given that they rely so heavily on 3-point shooting. And we might say, well, it's a small sample when we look at the playoffs dynamic, because in the playoffs, their most played lineups, White, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Porzingis, minus 10.7 per 100. And if you swap Porzingis for Luke Cornett, it's minus 27.3 per 100. So these are the 2 most played lineups against the Magic in the Magic series. And those lineups are getting destroyed. Again, tiny samples, but that's the point. These are small samples. A playoff series is by definition a small sample. And therein lies the Knicks' hope, in my opinion, is the fact that the playoffs is by definition a small sample. And so the Celtics style, and I've said this all year about the Celtics, and I'd love to hear you comment on this because this is really what I believe about them. I said this all year. When they're on, they will beat anyone. They'll beat New York. They'll beat Cleveland. They'll beat Minnesota. They'll beat OKC, whoever. It doesn't matter. They'll beat anyone. If they're shooting more closer to their average, they can be beaten by a very good team, a team that's willing to live with their isolation play and outscore them on the other end. They'll lose to those teams, but they can beat teams that aren't that good on pretty much any night if they're shooting at least around their average. If they aren't shooting well from 3, they can lose to anyone. They can lose to the Hornets. They can lose to Miami, to Philly, to Atlanta, to Chicago. It doesn't matter. They can lose to anyone. And so they should not beat the Knicks if they aren't getting up threes at a high volume and making them at a high rate. And that is really what the series comes down to. Obviously, there are ways that they get those threes, and that's what we'll talk about. But I genuinely believe the Celtics are more susceptible than most teams who are looked at as dominant as they are. And it's based on that variance factor, which we've seen kind of play out. They still got past the Magic, but we've seen that play out a little bit already with the starting lineup performances and their shooting performances so far. So I'm curious your thoughts on that, Jeff.
Well, what's interesting about the variance factor is that the Knicks are coached by someone who is probably willing to live with the variance. Like we did our Celtics episode around midseason, and one angle that I think gets underrated about the Celtics is, you hear the guys on TNT, you hear any national media people talk about the Celtics and how they're ruining basketball and they shoot too many threes, and there's an underlying implication that the Celtics go into every game and Joe Mazzulla is like, okay, how many threes can we get up and like just shoot it no matter what. But I think the misunderstanding of what the Celtics are trying to do is that they actually want to get to the rim. That is their goal. They have one of the best at it in Jason Tatum, but they're creating all this space so that guys like Holiday and White, who aren't maybe the most natural initiators from a neutral position, they have advantageous positions because the defense is constantly in rotation. It's easier for them to get to the rim because you kind of have to pick your poison. Do I leave a shooter to protect the rim, or do I just let them have the layup? Like the Celtics put you in these impossible situations. We know what Tom Thibodeau is going to do. He is not gonna let you get to the rim. That is his number one goal. So the whole point of the Celtic system is that if you're just obsessed with taking away the rim attempts, their second punishment is those 3-pointers. And yes, it's a dangerous and brutal punishment, but maybe when you're the underdog, your best chance of winning a series is just letting them fire away from three and hoping that the variance hits them. That could possibly be the solution to beating the Celtics for the Knicks. And one thing that the Knicks can tap into is within that paradigm of don't let Jason Tatum, don't let Jaylen Brown, don't let Derek White get to the rim, they can selectively choose who to help off of. And there are ways to funnel the ball to preferred shooters so that you don't have Porzingis firing away from wide open above the break. So you don't have Derek White as the guy who's shooting those wide open threes. And yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit, but I think you could make the argument that even though in the vacuum of a regular season, it might not be a palatable strategy to just let Boston shoot a bunch of open threes, when the odds have you at plus 550 and they have Boston minus 800, basically saying that Boston's somewhere between 15 and 20% to win or whatever, 10 and 20% to win, or excuse me, New York is 10 and 20% to win. You're trying to bump up that win percentage however you can. So maybe the Knicks win percentage goes to 25% or 30% if they just take all rim attempts away. And yeah, if you guys make all your open threes, cool. We were probably not going to win anyways, but maybe that does increase their win percentage.
No, to that point, which is a great point. To me, it's like if you lose by 40 or you lose by 10, it doesn't matter to me.
Exactly.
You're losing the game. So if you are gonna, I don't like when people look at blowouts, and it happens all the time. There'll be a playoff series where the first game is a blowout or it's a big upset and the other team wins, and it's like, well, this is over now. Clearly, they're so much better. They won by 50 points. It does not mean that. And we've seen that time and time again where a team that has blown out their opponent in one game gets blown out in the next game or in a different game later on in that series. And that is because
there was actually a 2-3 series that was very, very reminiscent to this one. And it occurred in 2016.
Tell me about it.
And it was the Oklahoma City Thunder against the San Antonio Spurs. Everybody remembers 2016 as the 73-win Warriors team. What people don't remember about that 2016 season is that the Warriors actually didn't have the highest SRS of a team in that regular season. The highest SRS was the San Antonio Spurs. That was when they got LaMarcus Aldridge. They had MVP level Kawhi, not MVP because Steph Curry existed in his prime, but Kawhi was playing at an MVP level.
Sure.
And the Spurs absolutely blitzed through the regular season and the first round. And then they dismantled OKC in games 1 and 2. Absolute. And then OKC turned around and won 4 straight.
Yep.
So, to your point, there is such a thing where just on a certain night, especially in today's league, maybe people would have stronger counters. You know, if the '90s Bulls.
That's a good point. Yeah.
If the '90s Bulls just dismantled the Jazz or something in the '98 finals, maybe you could be like, all right, this is just the better team because variance was lower. But there's so much 3-point shooting that you can just have a night where, you know, we just saw a game where Indiana shot 55% from 3 and Cleveland shot 25% from 3. This shit, that swings games, man.
It's a great point and definitely helpful historical context. I think the thing is, Jeff, though, like, so on one end, let's say the Knicks kind of play out Tibbs's approach where he stops Jason Tatum from getting to the rim, stops Jaylen Brown from getting to the rim. It's a bunch of threes by Porzingis, a bunch of step back threes by Tatum. Probably not by Tatum. I don't think he's going to let Tatum play one-on-one too much unless it's OG on him. But let's just say it's a bunch of threes and the Knicks play the variance game that way. Inadvertently, by the way. I don't think that Tibbs is going into it saying, I just need to let him shoot threes and hopefully they shoot a poor percentage and that's our best chance to win. I don't think that's what Tibbs is saying going into the game. But it plays out that way. For all intents and purposes, it would be the same thing as if he was thinking that way. On the other end now, what is the approach? Are you thinking you go for a lower variance approach, the Jalen Brunson offense 2 at a time, the old trusty 2-pointer at a time? Or is it a situation where you increase the variance on that and you get up a bunch of threes to counteract their threes? Or does that neutralize the quote unquote potential advantage you may have had by allowing the Celtics to shoot a bunch of threes? This is the cat and mouse game that I'm really interested in. What would be the ideal kind of offensive approach if the Knicks do go in this direction, which whether intentionally or not, they're not going to allow the Celtics to have shots at the rim, meaning the Celtics are going to take a bunch of threes and they may or may not make those threes. What would you do offensively given that context?
So you created sort of 3 different scenarios regarding the Celtics. They hit their threes at an elite rate. You can't win. They hit their threes at an average rate for them. Maybe you could win. They don't hit their threes or they hit them below average and you have a good chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you assume, you just toss away the first scenario, like not beating the Celtics if they hit them at an elite rate, and you just sort by scenarios 2 and 3, I would still be surprised if the Knicks... I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks won this series if the Celtics just get shot quality to death, like if they just have a super bad shooting series. But I would be surprised if they had an around average shooting series if the Knicks still won the series, and Karl Anthony Towns wasn't the best player. And that might sound kind of controversial to some people. I don't mean that dismissively to Jalen Brunson. I don't think that... It's not that I don't think this is the series for Jalen Brunson. I think this is the series for Karl Anthony Towns. We talked at the top of the show about forcing adjustments from Boston. To be honest, unless Jalen Brunson really ups his pull-up 3-point volume and, he comes out in game 1 or 2 and shoots 10 pull-up threes and is just torching Boston, I sort of feel like Missoula will live with whatever Brunson does on Holiday and White. Do you get that? I think Brunson can hold his own against Holiday and White, but that's gonna look like what the best games he's gonna put up are gonna look like 40 points on 30 shots or something. It's gonna be those types of games where I sort of feel like he's scoring a bit over a point per possession and Missoula's just fine with it. I think Towns can completely overhaul what Boston's approach is. I think he has that potential due to his gravity, his shooting, and the size he offers. Because we know that Boston's preferred coverage is that ghost coverage where they stick a wing on Towns and they hide the big on Hart. And Towns, it's on Towns. It's not a little bit on Hart too, but it's on Towns to punish them for that. And so I think that's what it looks like, to your question. I think that is what I would hope for, is you increase the variance defensively, and then you force adjustments through Towns and through Hart when he's on the court.
It's a great point. My one thought about that is that the Celtics have so many options they can go to literally on anyone. I mean, you can put Tatum on Towns, you could put Drew Holiday on Towns, you could put Jaylen Brown on Towns, you could put Porzingis on Towns for a little bit. Even when they go to double big with Al, you put Al Horford on Towns, who I think is going to spend a lot of time on Towns. You could put Luke Cornett on Towns. Like they have a plethora of guys they can throw at Karl Anthony Towns. And while I agree, he can probably torch any one of those guys individually. They are going to throw different bodies at him, and they're going to be able to do that because they can play two bigs at once. They can play one big, and they are the best in the NBA. We are about to see the best team in the NBA at the ghost coverage, especially against Josh Hart. Al Horford and Luke Cornett, I think, are the two best in the league, and they're both on the same team. Porzingis can be a little hit or miss. I don't think he knows how to play it that well. Al Horford, I think, is just excellent. And it's crazy that this guy is at this age able to be such a difference maker. But I think he is. And so to your point,
did you see actually that Horford had the number one like matchup given there was like some highish floor for opponent field goal attempts or something like that? And Horford versus Franz, he like just completely dominated Franz. That's absurd.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Horford is such a good defender, guys. Like he is just. I might just watch this game once and then whatever happens, watch it back again just to watch all Horford defensive possessions because his off-ball defense is crazy. His ghost coverage is crazy. His on-ball defense is excellent against bigs and wings too. Like this guy, there's no way this guy should be this good still. Let's jump into some questions. We got a lot of activity in the chat. Super happy to have all you guys here. Again, if you're just joining us, we're going to be doing this every single game this series for an hour before the game starts, leading up to tip off. We are going to be here hanging out with you guys. We're going to bring in analysts from, that analyze the Celtics, analysts that analyze the Knicks, and we're going to be doing this for every single game. And who knows, it might be 7 times we're doing this, depending on how things go. Let's see some questions. I know we had one from Jordan Bubb earlier. My question is, how does Thibodeau maximize this roster rotations scheme, aka scheme, when Brunson has these masterclass games? Because losing these games will hurt like a mother. I think, are you suggesting here that he needs to maximize his roster rotation when Brunson has these? Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. What do you think on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it is. Assuming I'm reading the question right, you can tell me if I'm wrong. But I think he's kind of pointing out a conflict in like the more Brunson does these, as Tibbs put it, dons his cape. the more incentivized he is to just keep letting Brunson, like he doesn't want to upset that order.
Yep. Yep. That's how I interpret it as well.
But I do think that that was okay to beat Detroit, even though I mentioned this in the article that I wrote for Strickland today. I don't know how many Knicks fans know this. The Knicks had almost by far the worst offensive rating of any team that advanced, of the 8 teams that advanced. This is a recurring theme for a team that always has, top 5, top 10 elite offenses in the regular season. They slow it down. They really, really love this sort of ball, but there isn't really evidence that it's actually working aside from Brunson's result. As a team, it's not working. And that would be my answer. If Jalen Brunson can't fit into a system that sees the team flourish, that's a bigger problem. I don't believe that's true. I don't see a world where Jalen Brunson's such a good catch and shoot shooter. As XJ has pointed out multiple times on this show, his passing is actually kind of underrated. He can be a quick processor if you ask him to be. And the thing is that if Tom Thibodeau were sitting in front of me and he said, well, yeah, I just don't want to it's about the team, guys. It's about the team having the best possible offense and the best possible results. And again, they had the worst offense of any of the winning teams of round one. That would be my answer. I wouldn't completely go away from what makes Jalen Brunson, but I would try to infuse more egalitarian principles, more spacing based principles that elevate the performances of guys like Bridges and OG Anunoby, and most importantly, like I just said, Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I mean I agree. And particularly here's what I'll be worried about it in the fourth quarter. So I think throughout the game there's typically at least a decent balance. I don't think Brunson does too much to kind of just take over the game and do his cape heroics stuff that Tibbs likes to talk about and obviously loves. And we all love as fans, kind of watching it. It's cool to see that one player kind of isolate and dominate a game. And if anyone's capable of it, Jalen Brunson is. But I'd be worried about it in the fourth quarter with a lead. If the Knicks go into the fourth quarter with a lead against Boston, if it's not like 15 points, if I was a Knicks fan, I would not feel comfortable with that. So because I think that's where things start to devolve into isolation play, and we saw famously in that in the Pistons series, in the game five that the Knicks lost, when Brunson and Hart came out, it was like, who's gonna isolate for me? And that's just the offense. So we'll definitely see what happens. We got a super chat, which is really cool. We're not requesting or asking for any contributions, but that's awesome. We really do super appreciate that from Meh. MEH. It looks like 8 Aussie bucks. I appreciate that. And I can't bring it up for some reason. I don't know. It's not showing in Riverside, so I'm just going to read it. In the YouTube chat, it says, I was actually upset that JB scored 40. Different to last season, all of us were healthy. They need to find a way for Towns being marked, or they need to find the way for Towns being marked by wings. Yeah, excellent comment for sure. Really appreciate you dropping this comment. It's totally true. Different than last season when there were injuries and Brunson needed to do what he was doing to some extent. I would argue still not to the extent that we saw it with his usage rate going through the roof. And again, I am a proponent of heliocentric basketball. I think it's an effective approach when guys specialize, because I think specialization is the key to efficiency, a major key to efficiency. But that being said, it definitely crossed a line even for me. And Brunson, as Jeff has talked about a ton, although I think he's an underrated passer, is not the Tyrese Halliburton kind of passer, the LaMelo Ball kind of passer, the Luka Doncic kind of passer that can completely damage you in the just as well as he can with his scoring as his passing. So I don't think that Brunson should be scoring as much as he is, and especially coming down the stretch of games, as opposed to how we saw things last season. What do you think, Jeff? I mean, you kind of just already said that. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. I just have a question back for you because I agree with everything you said.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up that you're a fan of heliocentrism and that you think it's a palatable, tenable style of basketball. Do you think that for guys like Edwards, Brunson, do you maintain that belief, or do you think that there's a threshold level of team based passing that needs to be required for heliocentrism to work, as in like a Halliburton or a Luka Doncic or a LeBron or Harden, those types of guys?
Yeah, I think it's definitely preferable when the player is as good a passer as he is a scorer. I think that is, if when I talk about heliocentric ball, that's kind of what I'm thinking, like a Luka type of, like, yes, he's an unstoppable scorer, even like a Jokic, which he doesn't necessarily play that way, but it's like an unstoppable scorer that the scoring is almost like the punishment for not letting them pass. Like
Yep.
that's how I think of it. So I obviously Brunson wouldn't be my choice, or isolation scoring heavy guys, especially ones that do it from 2 point range in particular, would not be my choice of guys to run a purely heliocentric offense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love the point that Meh made about it. Obviously, I'm biased here because I just said similar things, but it's just so important that the closer Towns' impact gets to Brunson's in this series, assuming they're not just both bad,
Yeah.
but assuming a highish threshold, the closer Towns gets to matching Brunson's impact, in my opinion, the Knicks' odds of winning this series increase.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I agree with that just because I think that would mean it's a weird way to think about it, but I feel like that would mean Josh Hart is either shooting extremely well or not playing as much for that. I don't think Towns can really match from an impact level because I do think that Towns' greatest impact would come if a center is guarding him, right? Like his personal impact, basically pulling Porzingis or Horford or whoever's protecting the rim away from the paint. That is where he's going to affect the game the most, and he's not allowed to do that when Josh Hart is on the court if he's not shooting well. So it's like a weird way to kind of back into that kind of framework, but that's how I think of it. I think if Towns' impact is really high, that means Josh Hart is hitting threes such that he broke Joe Mazzulla, who Mazzulla will play the numbers. Mazzulla is strictly going to play the numbers. He does not care if Josh Hart comes out and looks confident and hits 3 of 3 and he's pointing to the crowd, he's pointing to his teammates, he's popping, the chain of the Celtics on the bench. He doesn't care. He's going to say, "Okay, do it for 7 games." And so if Joe Mazzulla is going away from that, that means Josh Hart is doing something crazy. So that would bode really well for the Knicks.
So
Yeah.
I think to Mez's point though, and sort of what I'm getting at, what I was getting at when I said Towns has to break the scheme, and to a lesser degree Hart does. I don't think there's a world where I don't think Hart is capable of doing enough.
That's fair.
I don't mean that negative to Hart. I just mean that I don't think there's anything Hart could do. Like literally, I don't think there's any amount of shooting where Mazzulla would be like, all right, got to put a wing on him. I think Mazzulla will just stay committed to that particular strategy no matter what. I think it's on. Right. I think he's more likely, as weird as this sounds, I think he's more likely to switch or adjust the scheme if Towns is looking dominant against smaller players. I think that, from an aesthetic standpoint, is tougher for the coach to live with.
Yeah, no, that is true. That makes a lot of sense. I think that's compelling. I think that's probably right, especially knowing Mazzulla. I just wanted to shout out Hawkeye, who said that my question to y'all as the stats guys: Brunson has been the best player in each playoff series played as a Knick. Is that changing this series, or win or lose? So I think this really ties into what we've kind of already been talking about. You mentioned that you think that Towns needs to be the most impactful player in this series for the Knicks to win. But in practice, how do you think it will play out, right? Like, we've talked a ton about what we think should happen and how things might go and what Mazzulla might do. Like, how do you think it will play out with regard to the difference between, these guys?
I mean, I think that right now, given their deployment, that's kind of the difference between Tatum and Brunson. Because if you look at all the best data, Brunson and Tatum have been pretty similar for the last couple seasons. They've been, especially offensively. I would give the edge to Tatum, but if you look at dunks and threes EPM or B-ball index LeBron, they're pretty close. And in my opinion, the difference between Tatum and Brunson right now is that Tatum's style at his best allows his teammates to thrive, whether Tatum's shot is falling, whether all those things, because it's within this system of, I'm going to get to the rim, I'm either going to finish or I'm going to draw 2, and we're going to keep that wheel rolling. It doesn't seem like Thibodeau wants to use Brunson in a way where they can leverage his skill set to make guys like Bridges and Anunoby and Towns better, or their best selves. We haven't seen those guys be their best selves next to Brunson. We haven't really seen in Brunson's 3 years here. There have kind of been similar issues. I would argue that if Brunson's first 2 seasons in New York, those were fit concerns. Those weren't really all the coach's fault or all the players' fault. I think that it was just a murky fit and it was really hard. I stand by the fact that the theoretical upside of this team is very high and the synergy should be high. And we should be able to get a team that is not as good as Boston, but from a profile standpoint, similar. In the sense of, you have Derek White, you have Drew Holiday, you have Kristaps Porzingis, you have Tatum, You have Jaylen Brown, you have Al Horford. Anytime you have Peyton Pritchard, anytime any of these 7 guys are on the court, shit, even Hauser and Luke Cornett, you're getting the best out of all these guys.
Yep.
This isn't the Jason Tatum show. This isn't Jason Tatum. Jason's got it going tonight. So sorry, guys, your impact's just gonna be completely suppressed. It's Jason Tatum's great within the confines of the system he exists in, and it raises the floor and raises the ceiling of all the players he plays with. Do I think that Tatum has some sort of physical advantages over Brunson that make that easier as well? Probably. I think the size and the way he operates probably makes that a little bit easier. But do I think that if you just switched Tatum and Brunson and the teams they were on, would we still be saying, oh, does Brunson make his teammates better? And no, I think Missoula would be what we would be the way we would talk about Jalen Brunson if he was on Boston right now would be we can't even imagine it. So I also feel sort of my brain can't get away from. I'm not sure that Brunson was the best player in the Indiana series last year, but I don't know how popular that I don't know how popular that opinion will be.
Yeah, we don't have to dive too much into that. Is that tangent? I do want to talk about something you just said, but I want to try to get through it. It's tough because it's such a good question. Anytime we talk, we're gonna like go on these threads and these tangents, but I do want to get through it. But we have a ton of questions, so I want to kind of rapid fire through the questions. But I do want to stop for a second just to talk about this because I think this is important and interesting. Not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. What do you think about the fact that what you were kind of describing about Jason Tatum and Jalen Brunson and the difference between them and how one kind of doesn't prevent his teammates from being the best version of themselves necessarily? What do you think about the fact that this season Jalen Brunson had a 28.9 usage, Jason Tatum had a 30.1 usage, so a higher usage rate. Jalen Brunson had 32% assist percentage, and Jason Tatum had a 27% assist percentage. So by just raw statistics wise, Jason Tatum's taking many more of his team shots and distributing less to his team for assists than Jalen Brunson is. What do you think about that dynamic, and what do you think is not kind of like shining through those statistics?
What's not shining through those statistics is the hockey assist that Jason Tatum gets, and the way that the whole Boston engine starts with Tatum's ability to break down defenses, but it doesn't necessarily end one pass away because Boston's ball movement is so good, and they don't wait until the end of the shot clock the way the Knicks do. So when Jalen Brunson is going to work through very little fault of his own, I would imagine, maybe it is his fault, we don't know for sure, but through very little fault of his own, it's at the end of the shot clock, and he is going to work in a situation where the possession's probably going to end with him shooting or him making a pass and that person shooting. That's just more likely to occur in New York than in Boston. Boston moves quicker in the half court, and their ball movement is better. They're more incentivized to make these quick passes by their coach. And so more possessions in Boston end with these breakdowns from Tatum, where Tatum breaks down the defense. He finds the open guy, and Boston passes on good shots for better shots until they get the best shot. So I think that's not shining through the statistics when Tatum does that, and I think that shines through better statistics like this impact data.
Let's go, fellas. Everybody in the chat, Jeff is locked in. Jeff is locked in. He took that curveball and he knocked it right out the park. Easy. I'm sorry. I thought I was challenging you in the zone, but I guess I wasn't, Jeff. Let's go rapid fire through some of these questions. This is going to be hard for us. We're still working on our live streams and engagement, so we're pretty long-winded people, as you guys know. So we're gonna try to rapid fire through the questions because we got a lot of really great questions. First, from John Leary, what would your guys' guess be on rotations, minutes, distribution for the series? Does he start with a 9-man or keep it 8-man like he did for Detroit? What do you think about that one, Jeff?
I would still start Deuce, but whatever. I would keep the starting lineup how it is, and then I would bring Deuce, Shamet, and Mitch off the bench. That would be my 8-man rotation. And I know Payne had that nice game 1, but the Payne Deuce both off the bench minutes just means that Deuce plays less. He gets less in rhythm. I think it's even when Payne like shows some flashes across a couple minutes, I think on the net it's worse for the team. When he's in the rotation, his minutes infringe on Deuce and Bridges minutes. Like I think those guys should just get all the minutes, and I think the data reflects that pretty heavily. Like I think you want Brunson, Bridges, and Deuce to play close to 100% of the guard minutes. And then I like Shamit's shooting, even though he did look rough early on. I do think that he does have that passive impact that he can play, a couple minutes a half. So that would
I
be
think that,
that.
yeah, I think that's valid. I generally agree with that. The one thing I'll throw out there that we didn't see in Detroit that I think could happen in this series is that I would not completely say there's a 0% chance of Precious Achiuwa playing in this series, just as a result of some of the difficulties that Mitchell Robinson could have guarding the perimeter. Historically, we've seen his struggles with guarding the pick and pop, especially with a guy like Porzingis. I could imagine having Precious Achiuwa out there for some switchability. I would not put that past occurring, but I do think it'll probably be a 8-man rotation similar to the one that that Jeff described. Although, yeah, I would say I agree that it should be that. I don't know if it will be that.
I think Payne will play over Shamit.
Right. Yeah, you did say Shaman instead of Payne. Yeah, Payne will play over Shaman, I think. Shout out to Cool Genuine Phil because long life Celtics fan, gangrene all the way. Respect. We got to respect the Celtics fans in the chat. This is an NBA podcast, guys. We cover it up from all angles, and we will have some Celtics analysts coming on as we move forward. In this series as well. Let's see what we got. What do you think about this from Pastor Claudia? The Knicks starting five played 40% of all possible minutes against Detroit. That's a sick stat. That's crazy.
That's fucking crazy, man. How have we managed to find new stuff to talk about? It's just like
that's
okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Javier says would love the double big lineups, and I would dust off Wright for the second unit. Interesting. That's interesting.
Wright's interesting. I could be convinced in Wright over Shaman.
Same. I could as well. Wright is a very good defensive point guard. He can guard wings. He can guard guards. He can play up. He's a great disruptor, and you will probably need turnovers and need to run out in transition to beat the Celtics team, thereby reducing their number of possessions. And Wright is a guy who can do that for you. And if he's hitting his three-point shot, he's not hurting you offensively. So I think it's a great call.
He had some nice minutes for Miami last year against Boston as well. I think Javier sort of convinced me. I don't know why I didn't think about Wright, but I think I'd prefer Wright to Shamet if I was gonna remove Payne from the rotation.
Yeah, great call. Very interesting. From Darren, Kwong, XJ, and Jeff, I love your insights and the evidence that you bring to your analyses. Appreciate that very much. My question, how would the Knicks D change if they didn't play drop with Cat? What do you think, Jeff?
I just don't think you can do any one thing all the time. I think that you have to mix up coverages. I think that's pretty much the best answer I can give is that there are trade-offs to any pick and roll coverage. Some are obviously slightly better than others, but the worst thing you can do against a team as good and as smart as the Celtics is just do the same thing over and over again because they're just going to figure it out. So I don't have a great answer for what I think will work best because I do think that there are positive trade-offs to any of them. But I think the best thing the Knicks can do is just mix it up.
Yeah, I think you got to mix it up. The thing I would do the least of is Cat and drop, though. Although I agree, I would mix it up. That would be the lowest on in the mixed ingredients for me. Also, shout out to Javier Montalvo again, who dropped the super chat for us. Really appreciate that. Like I said, guys, we're not asking for contributions or anything like that, but that is super kind of you. Really appreciate that. For some reason, I can't get those up on the screen here on Riverside. I'll figure that out kind of moving forward as we continue to get more experience doing this. But Javier says, I know you all wanted Deuce with the starters, but against Boston, wouldn't a double big lineup and cross D schemes be the best way to go? And would Wright be beneficial to use due to his size? Can't stand Tibbs. Appreciate you, Javier. I really appreciate the comment. Yeah, what do you think to that, Jeff?
I could absolutely be convinced that Mitch with the starters is better than Deuce with the starters against Boston, especially with how I think that the hate that Deuce got in round one was overblown, but as for games 1 through 5, he was atrocious in game 6. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. 6, yeah. And obviously, it sucks being the guy that's like, hey, lay off Deuce, and then he turns around and lays an egg like that. But If he's gonna play like that,
I said he played like rookie Obi, which
yeah,
Obi's his first 40 games he was just looked like he had no idea what to do or where to be, and that's how Deuce was. It was really bad.
yeah, it was a deer and something worse than headlights. But he was not ready for that game. Whatever. If you're gonna try and armchair analyze it, it's possible that just 5 games of negative shooting variance just finally broke him a little bit. But you gotta hope that these couple games have helped him reset mentally. But if they haven't, then of course Mitch is a better option. Like Deuce is almost unplayable if he plays like he did in Game 6. That's that's terrible. Hart would be a much better option than Deuce, obviously, if the Deuce we saw in Game 6 is there. So, but to answer the more macro question, I could absolutely be convinced that even if Deuce is at his 80th, 90th, 100th percentile output, that it's still possible that the Knicks have a higher upside going double big and trying to leverage other strengths like size advantages against Boston. It's totally possible.
Yeah, no, it's fair. To me, I mean, I think it almost really depends on how Boston is shooting, and obviously you can't know ahead of time. But if Porzingis is hitting that above the break, top of the key three that he hits pretty consistently, if he's hitting that at the 45% clip that he does at times when he's like really right, it makes Mitch kind of unplayable to me because they're not going to put him on one of the wings, and that's a big concern. And it really depends on Porzingis, and Porzingis has not been consistent all season, and we'll see kind of what Porzingis we get and how much Porzingis we get versus Horford and all of those factors. But there's so many moving parts in this series. If you're going to be making adjustments and playing a guy like Mitch and knowing when to pull him and knowing when to keep him, you have to be on your toes. And, for Knicks fans' sake, let's hope that Tibbs is up to the task, because Mazzulla is going to be making not only half to half adjustments, not only quarter to quarter adjustments. Joe Mazzulla will make possession to possession adjustments. He will change his defensive approach within the possession from the sideline. He will change things out of a timeout. This is going to be a heavily adaptation heavy series, and Tibbs is going to have to keep up. I'll say that right now.
Boston does this cool thing where they like start a possession in zone,
Yes.
and then late in the shot clock switch to man.
Yes.
Like,
well, I was going to say, you know why they do that, right? Because it makes so much sense. When you get late in the shot clock, your opportunity to create good shots goes down dramatically. Don't forced into taking tough isolation mid-range shots typically late in the shot clock. And so it makes more sense, no matter who you're guarding, to just man up that player. Don't give any openings. You don't want to give up a good shot. You've already played defense. You've already stopped the offense from getting a good shot. Just make them make a tough one. It's so smart, and I love when they do that. Yeah, and it's a great call by you to mention that.
Hell yeah.
From Rel Knows Ball. Hello, XJ and Jeff. Question: will the Knicks go over under 10.5 occurrences of helping one pass away offensive shooter?
God damn it. This is the stuff, man.
Oh man.
I hope that like Celtics fans stumble upon this, because they must not have any clue what this is like. Like what this.
This is great.
What do you mean you help off shooters one pass away? What does that mean?
10.5 is such a good number, though. It's because it's
really
like, if it was lower, it'd be like, yeah, of course they're gonna do it a bunch of times. But 10.5 is like, they're not gonna do it that many times. There's gonna be like 100 offensive possessions. They're gonna help one pass away over 10% of the time. But it's like, yeah, they might.
I have a follow-up question for just you, XJ.
Yeah.
What's the line of number of times that somebody gets 2 feet in the paint, but they're stifled, like they're actually guarded well, and then somebody digs down and helps anyway? And then they're just left with the easiest kick out ever. That's something the Knicks do all the time too. It's fucking insane.
You know
like,
what?
Hart will be playing perfect defense. He'll have Tatum. Tatum's about to settle for like a fadeaway, and then somebody will just be like, "Oh, gotta help!" Like it's Tatum on Hart.
No, totally. Yeah, and what I was gonna interject with is that OG is very culpable of this. OG does this so much, and I think it's like he has such faith in his dig down abilities. He thinks he can get a strip or turnover or disrupt things. He's been so good defensively. I feel like all of his mistakes are just chill out, dude. Just like, you don't have to do, you're going the extra mile when the extra mile is actually a detriment to the team. So that is something that does happen. I agree with that. B Banks weirdly excited that we got Boston. Interesting. I feel like no other teams expose our weaknesses as much and abashedly spams advantages. Either will force us to make a change or expose our lack of creativity. I love this comment. Listen, I'm not reading the comments before. I'm just literally seeing there's a question in there or a comment in there, and I'm just pulling them up. I love this comment. This makes a ton of sense to me. What do you think?
It's a great comment. I was just laughing at like, there's no other team in the second round that's thinking like this, and it's just like, man, I hope this scheme gets exposed. Like not hope, but like, man, this scheme is about like Boston's about to roast us. You know, it's like fuck, man.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, no, spot on. It's like it's adapt or die. The Knicks are about to be
Exactly.
tossed. The Knicks are about to be tossed into the deep end, and they have the capability of upsetting Boston, especially if, as we've talked about, they get some shooting luck. The shooting variance goes their way, but it's going to require certain adjustments. Adapt or die. Like this will expose that. I completely agree with the comment.
Totally agree with that. I just also wanted to shout out Darren. Says Jeff's always in the zone. Hell yeah. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate the compliments always. Apparently Jeff needs to be the Yankees third base. I'm not sure where that come from necessarily, but I would concur with that. That sounds right to me.
I don't know, man. I was always more of a second baseman myself. Can Jazz move back to third? Can we?
Can Jazz move back to third? Let's see. Buy me some time, Jeff. I'm scrolling. There's a lot of comments here.
Oh, that's cool. Man. So do I talk about the Yankees more? I don't have anything interesting to say about the Yankees besides Aaron Judge. Do you know what Aaron Judge's numbers are? Oh, there we go.
Preposterous Barry Bonds
Ridiculous.
numbers. Is there really a lane from A10? Appreciate the comment. Is there really
Yeah,
a
it's a
lane
great
for Mitch
question.
to play the series without conceding three after three? This is kind of what I was alluding to a little bit. What do you think about this? Because you
It's just
mentioned it
it's
might
just
make
all
sense
the,
for him to play.
it's just all about the trade-offs. Like it really is. It's going to come down to that. You're going to concede some threes. Can Mitch do enough in other areas to make it okay that the Celtics get more open threes, get open threes at a slightly higher rate? Um, that's just the question. Can he dominate the offensive glass? Can he do those things? Like who was it actually you were talking about that we were talking about their the crazy vertical gravity they had? Was it
It was
Adams?
Adams. It was Steven Adams. Yeah.
Yeah, can Mitch do that? Because Knicks fans 2023, think back to 2023, early 2024, when Adams and Mitch were sort of being debated as the best offensive rebounder. A lot of Knicks fans had Mitch right up there with Adams. I think Adams has widened that gap, but can Mitch do that to the Celtics? Can he make it so they have to choose between helping off Mitch to take away a three and letting him destroy the offensive glass or take Mitch off the offensive glass? He has to force that decision. If he can't force that decision, he's probably unplayable.
Yeah, I agree. I think that again, like I mentioned, I think it does come down to in a lot of ways Porzingis' shooting and how that plays out. I think it does come down to a lot of ways what you were talking about, his leverage on the offensive rebounds and how that bends the Celtics defense. And what we were talking about specifically with Steven Adams is like when a Rockets player is attacking the paint and getting to the rim, the defense cannot come up, especially the rim protector who's down there guarding Adams. They cannot come up to contest that shot. In a lot of cases, the Trae Young situation, Trae Young's coming downhill. He's either going to go to the floater or he's going to go to the lob, and you have to make a decision. In this case, you have to make a decision with letting that guy get the shot off the rim and you didn't block it or steal it, and now Steven Adams is getting it and putting it back for a dunk, or you're going to let that player attack the rim and potentially get a layup or get a floater really close to the basket. That's the situation that Mitchell Robinson needs to put the Celtics defense in, and he needs to be just a complete monster. That is his advantage in the series, and would make him playable. We haven't seen it from him consistently yet. I'm not sure how healthy he is. I'm not sure how healthy he'll ever be, to be honest with you, or if he'll ever be the kind of dominant offensive rebounding monster that he has been in the past. We've seen some glimpses of it. Can he do it for a series? Can he force the Celtics to have to get out of a defensive scheme that they're comfortable with? That's a big question. And if he does, then that means he's not only playable, but should probably play a ton more than even Josh Hart, in my opinion. So, Tendril says Delon might as well be dead with Tibbs as coach.
How are we getting the best comments, man? This is great. Fuck, man.
That was that was in response. That was in response to Joseph K asking if Delon is dead. So to be fair, there was a reason for that comment.
Have you ever seen Major League Extra? The baseball movie.
I'm gonna. It's people will shame me for this. No, I don't think I've seen that.
So the whole point of the movie is they want to lose so they can move the franchise. So
Yeah.
they put together the worst possible baseball team, and the GM's like going through the list of potential candidates, and he's like, "This guy here is dead," and the owner's just like, "Cross him off the list then." That's Elon.
Somebody needs to clip that and put DeLon Wright on there because that's definitely the case. Okay, well, we have just a couple minutes left, and we're gonna kind of segue out so we can get ready to watch the game. Appreciate everybody joining here. It's been awesome. Had tons of concurrent watchers for our first time doing this. Again, we're going to be doing this for every single game. So if you came here, come back next time. More questions. We're going to have much more to analyze. I personally love analyzing a series after it's gotten underway because there's so much to break down about what coaches have done and things that they can change. And there's so much to analyze about what we are seeing on the court, how much of it is variance, how much of it is luck factors, how much of it is strategy, how much of it is a good approach that's resulting in luck factors that you would expect contingent on what your strategy is. Just all of those factors is my favorite, kind of my favorite stuff about breaking down a series. So game 2, we will be back breaking things down, what happened, what will happen, and we'll see. But I want to say, just for Knicks fans, there is a chance here. This is not a foregone conclusion, and I do think the Celtics should be heavy favorites. I do think the Celtics will win in 6 games, but the Celtics have shown again. I mentioned a major stat that I think is important. Their starting lineup has broken even across 760 possessions. Their starting lineup during the postseason is losing per 100 possessions by 11 points. Their second most played lineup is losing per 100 possessions by minus 27 points. They have not played well. They have struggled. And if they don't shoot a high volume of threes and make a high volume of threes, they can lose to anyone, especially a good team like the Knicks. So I do not think this is a foregone conclusion, although I do think the Celtics will probably win the series. We are going to have a lot to talk about game 2. Any last things you want to say, Jeff, before we get out of here?
No, just thanks to everyone for showing up. And I'm always so complimentary of XJ because I truly think he's one of the most underappreciated people in the sphere. He's so brilliant. But one thing you will want to come back for is one of his biggest strengths is game-to-game analysis. Like texting with him during the games is a crazy experience. It just changes the way I watch because I'm not perceptive in the way he is. So
that's not true at all. But
he'll just say something that's like, "Oh man, somebody's making such a big difference," and I'll just be like, "Oh yeah, I guess that I have sort of noticed that." So what I thought we put together, a good hour here, but I do think that the next show, when we have stuff to work with and we have things we can discuss in terms of how certain things worked and what didn't work, I do think the quality will increase. Not to mention, we probably won't take 12 minutes to answer certain questions. So there's that too.
Yes, I appreciate that, Jeff. Obviously, one of Jeff's greatest qualities is his humility, and definitely appreciate all the kind words and an elite analyst in his own right, and by any means, any standards, also is Jeff. I do want to say shout out to this person, Keyshawn, who's just basically asking everyone to subscribe, and that's really kind of you, and thank you. That's awesome. Very, very appreciate all of it. And shout out to all you guys. Shout out to everybody who was here in the chat. Again, like you said, like Jeff said, like I said, we will be back for game 2. And even shout out to Joseph K. So much glaze. I mean, we appreciate the glaze over here. We'll take what we get. All right. All right. We'll see you guys for game 2. We'll see how things go. Can't wait to break it down. Enjoy the game. Yeah, drink responsibly, like somebody else said, and we will see you next time.